Now, look at this monster. Pyramid head, textures that look like MS Paint, arms that don't bend. This is Silent Hill 2 2001. Now look at this one. Photorealistic, highly detailed, with physics. And I promise you, the first one is scarier. Let's figure out why. Because the answer isn't obvious. This isn't nostalgia. This isn't things were better back then. This is specific psychology. And horror developers in the 2020s either don't know it or they're deliberately ignoring it in favor of a pretty trailer. In this video, I want to explain exactly what happens in your brain when you see bad graphics and why your mind does something far worse to you than any realistic monster ever could. To understand why old graphics are scary, we need to understand how fear actually works. And here's something most people don't know. Fear is not a response to danger. Fear is a response to uncertainty. Your brain isn't afraid of what it sees, it's afraid of what it can't fully understand. The amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for fear, fires hardest not when a threat is obvious, but when it's unclear. That's why a noise behind a door is scarier than a monster standing right in front of you. When the danger is revealed, your brain switches into fight or flight mode. When it's not revealed, it gets stuck in a loop of dread. And this is exactly where old PSX horror games hit the target, often by accident. The technical limitations of the console wouldn't allow for a detailed monster. The fog in Silent Hill wasn't originally an atmospheric choice. It was a technical workaround because the engine couldn't render distant objects, but the result was a perfect psychological trap. Now here's the specific mechanism. In 1970, Japanese roboticist Masahiro Mori described a phenomenon he called the uncanny valley, Bukimi no Tani in Japanese. The idea is simple. The more a robot or character resembles a human being, the more we like them. But only up to a point. When the resemblance becomes almost complete, but not quite, the effect reverses. Revulsion, unease, the feeling that something is deeply wrong. PSX monsters sit far from realism, and your brain processes them calmly as a symbolic representation of danger. But a monster from a photorealistic horror game lands right in the valley, almost like a living creature, but something is off. The eyes don't blink quite right. The skin texture isn't quite real. The movement is slightly stiff, and that discomfort gets interpreted by your brain as something fundamentally different. Not fear, but disgust. Disgust and fear are different emotions. Disgust is a protective response. It says, don't touch this, step away. Fear is the anticipation of a threat. It says, something is coming for you and you don't know where from. Horror runs on fear. Modern games often accidentally produce disgust and call it horror. That's a fundamental mistake. Let's get specific with examples. Silent Hill and Resident Evil used the hardware's limitations as a tool, consciously or not. In Silent Hill 2, the controls are deliberately awkward. James moves slowly, heavily. The camera doesn't help you. This isn't a bug. It's helplessness by design. You literally cannot run away fast. Your brain reads this as a real threat. Resident Evil used a different trick. Fixed camera angles. You enter a room and see a corridor, but the camera doesn't show you what's around the corner. You hear a sound, but you can't see where it's coming from. That's uncertainty again, the primary tool of fear. The modern Resident Evil games with over-the-shoulder cameras removed that mechanic and took half the atmosphere with it. Scary isn't what you see, scary is what you can't see, and knowing it's there. PSX horror games hid monsters behind fog, behind corners, behind poor visibility. Modern horror games show everything in 4K and strip fear of its most powerful weapon. When the graphics are bad, your brain fills in the gaps itself. A blurry silhouette in the fog isn't just a pixelated monster, it's everything you're afraid of. Your brain projects its own fears onto an undefined shape. This is called apophenia, the tendency to find familiar patterns in random data. It's why people see faces in clouds and hear voices in static. And it's exactly why a pixelated monster is scarier than a realistic one. A photorealistic monster leaves no room for imagination. You see every fold of skin, every tooth, every movement. Your brain gets the full picture and shifts from anxiety mode into threat assessment mode. It's a big monster with claws. I need to run or fight. That's not horror anymore. That's action with a danger element. The difference is fundamental. This doesn't only work in games. Think about Jaws. Spielberg's shark is barely shown for the entire film. Not because Spielberg wanted suspense. The mechanical shark broke down every single day on set, and they simply couldn't use it. But the result was a film that still scares people today, precisely because you almost never see the shark. Now think of any modern shark film with CGI. It's not scary. It's almost funny. It would be dishonest to say that all modern horror games failed. There are exceptions, yes, and they're revealing precisely because they break the rule of more graphics equals better. Alien Isolation, 2014. The xenomorph is detailed, but it's almost always out of sight. You hear it. Its shadow flickers past. Security cameras show it as a blurry silhouette. The developers consciously brought back the PSX horror principle. Hide it, don't show it. Or amnesia, the dark descent. There's no combat system at all. You can't kill the monster. You can only hide. And that completely removes the threat assessment mode. Your brain isn't thinking about how to defeat it. It's thinking about how to survive. That's a completely different kind of fear. More ancient, more real. And it's exactly what PSX horror games achieved through bad controls and fog. The modern horror games that actually work don't succeed because of their graphics. They succeed in spite of them. They use the same principles as the old ones, hiding information, making the player feel helpless, keeping the threat uncertain. So why do developers keep making the same mistake? It's not incompetence, it's incentives. A photorealistic monster wins awards. It looks incredible in a trailer. It sells the game at the showcase, a fog that hides everything, that doesn't screenshot well. You can't put uncertainty on a poster. Think about it from the publisher's side. You've spent $200 million making a game. You need to show something at E3. You need a trailer that makes people stop scrolling. A detailed monster with realistic skin and dynamic lighting. That stops people. A dark corridor with static and distant footsteps. That doesn't. Not in a 90-second trailer. So the decision isn't made by the designer who understands fear. It's made by the marketing department that understands clicks. And that's how you get a horror game that looks stunning and feels like nothing. The problem is that fear doesn't market well, but spectacle does. And somewhere along the way, the industry confused the two. The scariest experiences in gaming history were never the most impressive-looking ones. They were the ones that took something away from you. Information, control, safety. And that's very hard to put in a trailer. So, old PSX horror games are scarier not because things were better back then, and not because you grew up on them. They're scarier because, through technical limitations, accidentally, they landed on the most precise mechanism of fear, uncertainty, helplessness, space for the imagination. Modern horror games buy powerful engines and hire incredible artists, and in doing so, they remove the very thing that made them frightening. The scariest thing a horror game can do is not show you the monster. It's convince you the monster is already here, and you just haven't seen it yet. Pyramid Head isn't scary because he's detailed. He's scary because you don't understand what he is, where he came from, or whether you can escape him. There are no answers, and that is unbearable. What game scared you the most and why? Write it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious whether the answers will be old titles or new ones, because that itself is the answer to everything we just talked about.